The hospital director froze when he saw his lost daughter's ring on the new nurse's hand. The cold morning light cut through the hallways of St. Vincent Memorial Hospital like a surgeon's blade. Precise, clinical, unforgiving, Dr. Richard Hale had walked these corridors for nearly 3 decades, first as a young resident full of dreams, then as chief of surgery, and now as director of the entire institution. He knew every corner, every shadow, every sound the old building made when it settled in the Mississippi heat. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. He stood frozen outside the conference room, his hand trembling as he gripped the personnel file of the new nurse. Emily Carter, 26 years old, graduated summa cum laude from nursing school. Impeccable references, warm smile in her ID photo. None of that mattered. What mattered was what he'd seen 3 seconds ago when she'd extended her hand to shake his. The ring, a simple silver band with a small blue star-shaped stone that caught the fluorescent light and threw it back like a tiny beacon. Richard's vision blurred, his throat tightened. 20 years collapsed into nothing, and suddenly he was back in that cramped apartment after the divorce, watching his 6-year-old daughter twirl in her pink dress, her eyes wide with wonder as he slipped that ring onto her tiny finger. "This ring is magic, sweetheart," he'd told her, his voice breaking even then because he knew Margaret was planning to leave, knew he was losing his little girl. "As long as you wear it, Daddy will always find you." But he never did. Richard blinked hard, forcing himself back to the present. Emily had already walked away, her white sneakers squeaking softly against the linoleum as she followed the head nurse toward the cardiac unit. He watched her go, his heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape his chest. It couldn't be the same ring. There had to be thousands of silver rings with blue stones. Millions. Probably. He was being ridiculous, projecting 2 decades of grief onto some poor young woman who just wanted to do her job. But that stone, that specific star shape, he'd bought it from a street jeweler in the French Quarter during a medical conference. A one-of-a-kind piece the old man had made from melted-down family silver, and a synthetic sapphire he'd cut himself. Richard had been drawn to it because Sophia loved stars, would lie on her back in their tiny yard and count them until her eyes grew heavy. "Dr. Hale?" He startled, nearly dropping the file. Janet from HR stood beside him, eyebrows raised with concern. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." That was exactly what he'd seen. A ghost wearing scrubs and a name tag that said Emily instead of Sophia. "I'm fine," he managed, though his voice sounded strange to his own ears. "Just tired. Long night." Janet nodded sympathetically. She'd worked here long enough to know the toll the job took. "Well, Ms. Carter seems like she'll be a great addition to the team. Dr. Morrison is thrilled to have her in cardiac." Richard forced himself to nod, to smile, to say something appropriate about staffing levels and patient care ratios, but his mind was already somewhere else, rifling through the locked drawer in his office where he kept the only photograph he'd allowed himself to keep. The morning crawled by with agonizing slowness. Richard tried to focus on administrative reports, budget meetings, a conference call with the hospital board, but his thoughts kept drifting back to that ring, to those few seconds of introduction when Emily Carter had smiled at him with professional warmth and said, "It's an honor to meet you, Dr. Hale. I've heard wonderful things about this hospital." Her voice had been soft, with just a hint of a southern drawl that could have come from anywhere below the Mason-Dixon line. Nothing familiar about it. Nothing that stirred any memory of Sophia's high. Bright little girl voice asking him to read just one more bedtime story. But the ring. God. The ring. By noon, Richard couldn't take it anymore. He locked his office door, pulled out his keys, and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. The photograph lay face down beneath a stack of old medical journals, as if hiding from the light might somehow make the past hurt less. His hands shook as he turned it over. There she was, Sophia at 6 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a red balloon at the hospital's annual summer picnic, the last good day before everything fell apart. And there, clearly visible on her right hand, was the ring, that impossible, unique, star-shaped blue stone, catching the sunlight, just like it had caught the fluorescent light this morning. Richard's breath came in short, painful gasps. He was 53 years old, a respected physician, a rational man who dealt in facts and evidence. He'd spent 20 years accepting that Sophia was gone, that Margaret had disappeared into the vast American landscape with their daughter, and there was nothing he could do about it. The police had tried. Private investigators had tried. He'd spent a fortune and gotten nowhere. And now this. He studied the photograph with the intensity he usually reserved for X-rays and lab results, comparing every detail he could remember of Emily Carter's face to the child in the picture. The eyes might be similar, dark, wide-set, with that slight downward tilt at the outer corners, but 20 years changed everything, turned children into adults, softened features, added layers that made recognition impossible, unless you had something concrete, something undeniable, like a ring that shouldn't exist on anyone else's finger. Richard placed the photograph carefully on his desk and pulled up Emily Carter's personnel file on his computer. Date of birth, April 15th, 1999. That was wrong. Sophia had been born in March, but adoption records, new birth certificates, those could all be changed. Place of birth listed as Hattiesburg, Mississippi, raised by grandmother, deceased 3 months ago. No other family listed. His pulse quickened. No family raised by a grandmother. Found at what age? Adopted when? The file didn't say, and that omission itself felt significant. Richard's finger hovered over the phone. He could call Hale, request more detailed background information. He was the director. After all, he had the authority. But something stopped him. Some instinct that this needed to be handled carefully, quietly. If he was wrong, he'd terrify an innocent young woman. If he was right, his daughter was walking the halls of his hospital, and she had no idea who he was. The thought broke something inside him. 20 years of carefully maintained composure cracked like old glass, and Richard Hale, decorated surgeon, hospital director, pillar of the Jackson medical community, put his head in his hands and wept. 3 days passed before Richard worked up the courage to do more than watch Emily from a distance. 3 days of catching glimpses of her in the corridors, of finding excuses to walk past the cardiac unit, of feeling like a creep and a desperate fool all at once. He told himself he was being professional, observing a new employee's performance, but the truth sat heavy in his chest. He was searching for proof, for some sign that the universe hadn't played the cruelest trick imaginable by placing his lost daughter right in front of him without any way to know for certain on Thursday afternoon. He found her in the hospital's small courtyard garden. She sat alone on a wooden bench beneath the old magnolia tree, eating a sandwich from the cafeteria, her face tilted toward the weak autumn sunlight, and she was humming. Richard stopped dead in his tracks. The melody drifted across the garden, soft and achingly familiar. His feet carried him forward before his brain could catch up, drawn by those notes like a man stumbling toward water after days in the desert. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. The words died in Emily's throat as she noticed him approaching. She straightened quickly, brushing crumbs from her scrubs with an embarrassed smile. Dr. Hale, I'm sorry. I didn't see you there. I'm on my lunch break. I wasn't shirking or... No, please. Richard held up a hand, trying to keep his voice steady, even though his heart was trying to punch its way out of his chest. That song. Where did you learn it? Emily's confusion was obvious. The song? You mean... She looked down at her hands, at the ring glinting in the sunlight, and something flickered across her face. I don't really know. I've always known it. I guess since I was little. Your grandmother taught it to you. Maybe. Emily's brow furrowed. Grammy, that's what I called her. She said my mother used to sing it to me before everything happened, but I don't remember that. I don't remember much of anything from before I was 6. Richard sat down on the bench before his legs could give out. He knew he should be careful, should guard his reactions, but the need to know overwhelmed every other instinct. 6 years old, he said quietly. That's when your grandmother adopted you. Emily nodded, something wary entering her eyes now. Dr. Hale, is everything okay? You seem... I'm fine. I'm sorry. I don't mean to pry. It's just... He searched for an explanation that wouldn't sound insane. I had a daughter. She was 6 when I lost her. Sometimes I see children that age or hear certain songs, and it brings it all back. The wariness in Emily's expression melted into sympathy. I'm so sorry, is she... I don't know, Richard said. and it was the most honest thing he'd said to anyone in years. She disappeared 20 years ago. My ex-wife took her and vanished. I've been looking ever since. Emily's hand went to her chest, right over her heart. That's awful. I can't imagine. And you never found any trace? Nothing concrete. Richard forced himself to look away from the ring, to meet her eyes instead. Tell me about your grandmother. How did she come to adopt you? It wasn't really a formal adoption, I don't think. At least, I never saw any papers. Emily set her sandwich down, no longer interested in eating. Grammy found me at a Greyhound station in Hattiesburg. I was alone, confused, couldn't tell her my name or where I came from. She waited for hours to see if anyone would claim me, but nobody did, so she took me home. She didn't call the police. Emily's laugh was uncomfortable. Grammy was complicated. She didn't trust authorities much. Had her reasons, I suppose. She always said the system would just put me in foster care, bounce me around until I aged out. At least with her, I had stability, love. Richard's hands clenched in his lap. A 6-year-old girl, alone at a bus station. No memory of her past. It fit too perfectly. But Hattiesburg was 3 hours south of Jackson. Margaret could have taken Sophia anywhere. You really don't remember anything from before? He asked, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. Just fragments. Feelings. Mostly. Emily stared at the magnolia tree, its waxy leaves rustling in the breeze. Sometimes I dream about a voice, a man's voice, singing that song, and there's always this sense of, safety, warmth. But when I wake up, I can't hold on to it. It slips away like water. Richard's vision blurred. He blinked hard, trying to maintain composure. The ring, he said, the words escaping before he could stop them. Where did you get it? Emily looked down at her hand, twisting the silver band absently. I was wearing it when Grammy found me. It was too big then. I had to wear it on a chain around my neck until I was old enough that it fit my finger properly. She always said it must have been important, that someone who loved me gave it to me. I've never taken it off since I was 12. Richard couldn't breathe. The garden seemed to tilt around him. The magnolia tree and the bench and Emily's concerned face all swirling together into a watercolor blur. Dr. Hale. Emily leaned closer, her hand hovering near his shoulder but not quite touching. Are you having chest pains? Should I get someone? No, He stood abruptly, needing distance, needing air, needing to think. I'm fine. I just remembered I have a meeting. I'm sorry for keeping you from your lunch. You didn't. But Richard was already walking away, his legs carrying him toward the hospital entrance on pure autopilot while his mind reeled with impossible possibilities. A 6-year-old with no memory, found at a bus station, a ring that shouldn't exist, a song he'd sung every night for 6 years. It wasn't proof. It couldn't be proof, but it was something, maybe everything. He made it to his office and locked the door before pulling out his phone with shaking hands. Dr. Marcus Webb had been his roommate in medical school, now ran a genetics lab in Memphis. If anyone could arrange a discrete DNA test, it would be Marcus. But even as Richard composed the text message, another part of his brain was screaming at him to slow down, to think this through. What if the test came back negative? Could he survive that? Could Emily survive knowing he'd suspected, hoped, and been wrong? And what if it came back positive? Richard looked at the photograph on his desk, at Sophia's gap-toothed grin and that star-shaped ring catching the light. Then he thought of Emily in the garden, humming their song, twisting that same impossible ring on her finger while talking about fragments of memory she couldn't quite grasp. His thumb hovered over the send button. 20 years of searching. 20 years of grief and guilt and wondering. Maybe it was time to know for certain. He pressed send. Victoria Hale had mastered the art of observation long before her older brother became director of St. Vincent Memorial, while Richard had buried himself in medical textbooks and patient charts. Victoria had learned to read people, their weaknesses, their desires, their secrets. It was a skill that had served her well in the cutthroat world of hospital administration, where she held the position of chief operating officer despite Richard's reluctance to give her any real power. She'd spent 48 years living in her brother's shadow, and she was tired of it. That's why she noticed immediately when Richard started acting strange, The lingering glances down the cardiac unit hallway, the sudden interest in personnel files he'd normally delegate, the way he'd zone out during budget meetings, his attention clearly somewhere else. Victoria had learned to recognize obsession. She'd lived with it her whole life, watching their father obsess over Richard's achievements, watching Richard obsess over his career, his patience, his lost daughter, always the golden boy, always the one everyone loved. But this obsession was different, focused, directed at someone specific. It took Victoria less than a day to figure out who. Emily Carter, new nurse, cardiac unit, 26 years old, pretty in an understated way, competent according to the reports, seemingly unremarkable in every respect. Yet Richard couldn't stop watching her. Victoria stood in the third-floor window overlooking the courtyard garden, a cup of coffee growing cold in her hands as she observed her brother sitting on the bench next to the young nurse. Even from this distance, she could see the intensity in Richard's posture. The way he leaned forward like Emily's words were the most important thing he'd ever heard. And then she saw it. The way Emily gestured with her right hand, and something on her finger caught the afternoon light. A ring. Victoria's blood turned to ice. She set down her coffee with trembling hands and pulled out her phone, pulling up the private investigator's contact information she kept for difficult situations. Frank Morrison didn't ask questions and didn't judge. He just delivered information quickly and quietly. "I need a full background check," she said when he answered. "Emily Carter, currently employed at St. Vincent Memorial. And Frank, I need it yesterday. Rush job costs extra." "I don't care, just do it." Victoria ended the call and pressed her forehead against the cool glass window. 20 years ago, she'd made a choice. A terrible, desperate choice born from jealousy and ambition, and the corrosive belief that if she couldn't have her father's love, at least she could have his legacy. She'd been the one who convinced Margaret to run. It hadn't been difficult. Margaret was already fragile, already drowning in the pressure of being married to the brilliant Dr. Hale. Victoria had simply offered her a way out. Money, a new identity, help disappearing where Richard would never find her. In exchange, Margaret would take Sophia with her. At the time, Victoria had told herself she was doing everyone a favor. Margaret wanted to leave anyway. The child would be fine. And Richard, well, Richard would be devastated, distracted, weakened, easier to control, easier to outmaneuver when it came to hospital decisions and their father's estate. Their father had died 6 months later, never knowing what Victoria had done, never knowing she'd destroyed his perfect son's perfect family out of spite. The guilt had been manageable, mostly, for 2 decades. She'd convinced herself that Sophia was probably better off, that Richard had recovered, that the ends justified the means. She'd built her power base carefully, positioning herself to eventually push Richard out and take full control of St. Vincent Memorial. But if that ring meant what she thought it meant, Victoria's phone buzzed. Frank worked fast. She scanned the preliminary report, her dread growing with each line. Emily Carter, found at age 6 at a Greyhound station in Hattiesburg. No memory of her past, raised by Eleanor Carter, who died 3 months ago. No birth certificate on file until age 7. No medical records before age 6. And the timing. God, the timing was perfect. 3 weeks after Sophia disappeared, a mysterious 6-year-old girl shows up alone at a bus station. Victoria closed her eyes, her mind racing through scenarios. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe Emily was just some random abandoned child who happened to have a similar ring. Maybe Richard was seeing patterns where none existed because he'd never let go of his grief. But she knew her brother. He wouldn't act this strange unless he suspected something concrete. And if he suspected, he'd investigate. He'd do tests. He'd find out the truth. And if Emily really was Sophia, Victoria imagined Richard's face when he learned his sister had orchestrated his daughter's disappearance. Imagined the lawsuits, the criminal charges, the public disgrace. Imagined losing everything she'd spent her life building. No, that couldn't happen. Wouldn't happen. She pulled up her contacts again, this time scrolling to Dr. Patricia Chen, the hospital's HR director. Patricia owed her favors, several of them, the kind that involved buried mistakes and overlooked infractions. "Patricia, it's Victoria. I need you to start documenting some concerns about Emily Carter's performance. The new cardiac nurse. I haven't heard any complaints." That's because they haven't been formalized yet. But I've been hearing troubling things. Questions about her credentials, her judgment. Nothing concrete yet. But we need to start a file, just in case. Patricia hesitated. Victoria, if there are real concerns, we should follow proper procedure. This is proper procedure. We're protecting the hospital. Just start the documentation. I'll get you specifics by Monday. Victoria ended the call before Patricia could argue further. It was a start. Plant seeds of doubt. Create a paper trail. Make Emily Carter seem unreliable. If Richard tried to claim she was his daughter, it would look like desperation. Like he was defending her because of some inappropriate attachment, not because of any real evidence. She looked back out the window. Richard and Emily had both left the garden now, but Victoria could still picture them sitting together. Richard's face filled with hope for the first time in years. Hope was dangerous. Hope made people reckless. Victoria had spent 20 years living with what she'd done. The guilt buried so deep she barely felt it anymore. She'd convinced herself she was the victim, overlooked, undervalued, forced to take drastic measures just to be seen. Margaret had wanted to leave anyway. Sophia would have been fine wherever she ended up. Richard had moved on, hadn't he? Built a career, ran the hospital, lived his life. But now, watching her brother chase after a ghost, Victoria felt the old justifications crumbling. This wasn't about protecting her position anymore. It was about survival. If the truth came out, she wouldn't just lose her job. She'd lose everything. Her reputation, her freedom, possibly years of her life in a prison cell. She couldn't let that happen. Wouldn't let that happen. If Richard wanted to find his daughter, he'd have to go through Victoria first. And this time, she wouldn't be the scared, jealous younger sister making impulsive choices. She'd be strategic, careful, ruthless. She'd bury this before it could destroy her, even if it meant destroying Emily Carter in the process. Victoria pulled out her phone one more time, composing an email to 3 board members she knew she could influence. Subject line: concerns regarding Director Hale's recent behavior and professional judgment. Her finger hovered over the send button for only a moment before she pressed it. The war had begun. Emily noticed the shift on Monday morning. Nothing dramatic. Nothing she could point to and say definitively, "This is wrong." Just small things. The way Nurse Rodriguez suddenly found reasons to work different shifts. How Dr. Morrison, who'd praised her work last week, now double-checked every medication order she entered with barely concealed skepticism. The whispers that stopped when she entered the break room. By Tuesday, the small things had grown teeth. Emily arrived for her shift to find Patricia Chen from HR waiting at the nurses' station, her expression professionally neutral in that way that meant trouble. "Ms. Carter, could we speak privately for a moment?" Emily's stomach dropped, but she followed Patricia into an empty conference room, her mind racing through every patient interaction, every medication administered, searching for what she might have done wrong. "There's been a concern raised about one of your patients," Patricia said, sliding a file across the table. "Mrs. Kowalski in room 412, the dosage you administered yesterday for her blood pressure medication." Emily opened the file, scanning the medication log. "I gave her exactly what Dr. Morrison prescribed, 50 milligrams of... The concern is that the prescription may have been misread, that you should have caught the error before administering. But there was no error." Emily pulled out her phone, showing the photo she always took of prescriptions before administering medication. A habit Grammy had taught her. "See, 50 milligrams? That's what the chart said, that's what I gave." Patricia's expression didn't change. "I see. Well, we'll need to investigate further. In the meantime, you'll be placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of our review." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. Administrative leave for following a doctor's orders correctly. It's standard procedure when concerns are raised. You'll still be paid, of course. We should have this resolved within a few days. But Emily heard what wasn't being said. The doubt underneath. The assumption of guilt. She'd been in Jackson less than 2 weeks, and somehow she'd already become a problem. She gathered her things in a daze, avoiding the curious stares of her coworkers as she walked out of the cardiac unit. Her hands shook as she pushed through the hospital's main doors into the bright October morning, the sunshine feeling like mockery. Where had this come from? She'd been so careful, so thorough with every patient. Had she actually made a mistake and not realized it? But no, the photo proved. Emily. She turned to find Dr. Hale hurrying across the parking lot toward her, his face tight with concern. Something in her chest loosened slightly at the sight of him. At least someone didn't look at her like she was incompetent. Dr. Hale, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. This is wrong. The accusation is baseless and I'm going to fix it. Emily blinked back unexpected tears. You believe me. Of course I believe you. The intensity in his voice surprised her. I've been watching your work, Emily. You're one of the most careful, conscientious nurses I've seen in 30 years. This doesn't make sense. Then why is it happening? Richard's jaw tightened, and Emily saw something dark flash across his face. I have my suspicions, but right now, I need you to trust me. Go home. Try not to worry. I'm going to handle this. She wanted to ask what he meant by suspicions, wanted to understand why the hospital director was taking such a personal interest in defending a nurse he barely knew, but the kindness in his eyes made her throat tight. So she just nodded and walked to her car. Richard stormed back into the hospital, his rage barely contained. He went straight to Victoria's office without knocking, slamming the door behind him hard enough to rattle the diplomas on her wall. Victoria looked up from her computer with manufactured surprise. Richard, to what do I owe? What the hell are you doing? I'm sorry. Emily Carter. The suspension. The investigation that's based on absolutely nothing. He planted his hands on her desk and leaned forward. I know you're behind this. Victoria's expression shifted from surprise to cool assessment. That's quite an accusation. I'm the CUO, Richard. I don't micromanage nursing staff. If there are performance concerns, char handles, don't play games with me. You've been watching me, haven't you? Noticed my interest in Emily and decided to what? Punish her for it. Punish me. Your interest. Victoria stood slowly, moving around the desk to face him. That's an interesting way to put it. The board has noticed too. You know, the way you watch her, the private conversations. Some might call it inappropriate, Richard. A 53-year-old man, a young employee barely out of school. Richard felt heat crawl up his neck. This isn't about anything inappropriate. I have my reasons for what? Following her around like a lovesick puppy, making excuses to be near her. Victoria's voice dropped to something dangerous. Or maybe you've convinced yourself of something even more ridiculous. That ring she wears. Perhaps, did you notice it? Did it remind you of something? Richard's blood turned cold. I'm not blind, and I'm not stupid. Victoria crossed her arms. Whatever you think you figured out, brother, I suggest you let it go. That girl is trouble. Questionable background, falsified credentials. Her credentials aren't falsified. Are you sure? Have you checked? Really checked? Victoria's smile was sharp as glass. Because I have, and there are gaps, Richard. Big ones. The kind that suggests she's not who she claims to be. The kind that could damage this hospital's reputation if we're not careful. Richard straightened, his mind racing. Victoria was lying. Had to be lying. But the confidence in her voice, the specific accusations, what did you find? Nothing I'm prepared to discuss with you while you're clearly compromised. Victoria moved back to her desk, dismissing him. The investigation will proceed according to protocol. If Ms. Carter is innocent, she'll be cleared. If not, she shrugged. Then we'll have protected the hospital from a potentially dangerous employee. Richard wanted to grab his sister by the shoulders and shake the truth out of her. Wanted to scream that she had no idea what she was interfering with. But something in Victoria's eyes stopped him. A calculation. A knowing. Like she was waiting for him to confirm her suspicions. He forced himself to take a breath. To think strategically instead of emotionally. Fine, he said quietly. Conduct your investigation. But if I find out you've manufactured evidence or manipulated this process in any way, sister or not, I will have you removed from this hospital, do you understand? Victoria's smile never wavered. Crystal clear, brother. Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Richard found Emily sitting in the hospital garden that evening, in the same spot where they'd talked days before. She looked up as he approached, her eyes red-rimmed. I thought you went home, he said gently. I tried, but She gestured helplessly. I needed to think, to figure out what I did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Richard sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Emily, I need to ask you something, and I need you to trust that I have a good reason for asking. She turned to face him, confusion and hope warring in her expression. Would you be willing to take a DNA test? Emily stared at Dr. Hale in the fading garden light, trying to make sense of his words. A DNA test. The question hung between them like something fragile and dangerous, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. I don't understand, she said finally. Why would I need a DNA test? What does that have to do with the suspension? Richard's hands clenched in his lap. It doesn't. Not directly, Emily. He paused, seeming to struggle with something internal. Do you remember what I told you the other day about my daughter? That she disappeared when she was 6? That your ex-wife took her? Emily's breath caught. Dr. Hale, are you saying you think I'm saying that ring you're wearing shouldn't exist? I bought it from a street jeweler in New Orleans 20 years ago, one of a kind, made from melted family silver. I gave it to my daughter the week before she vanished. His voice cracked. I told her it was magic, that as long as she wore it, I'd always find her. Emily looked down at the silver band, at the star-shaped blue stone that caught the last rays of sunlight. Her hand trembled. That's impossible. Grammy said I was wearing this when she found me. She said that you were alone at a bus station, 6 years old, no memory of where you came from. Richard turned to face her fully. Sophia, my daughter, was 6 when she disappeared. Same age, same time frame. The world tilted. Emily gripped the edge of the bench, trying to anchor herself against the wave of vertigo washing over her. But I don't remember anything about children block out trauma. It's a protective mechanism, and 20 years is a long time. Richard's eyes were wet now, pleading. I'm not saying I'm certain, but Emily, don't you want to know? Don't you want to understand where you really came from? Emily's mind raced through her fragmented memories, the pieces that had never quite fit together, the dreams that plagued her, always the same voice singing, always the feeling of being held, always the inexplicable certainty that she'd been loved once by someone she couldn't remember. The song, she whispered. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. You said I was humming it the other day, did you? Did you used to sing that? Every night, it was Sophia's favorite. A sharp pain lanced through Emily's head. She closed her eyes, and suddenly she was 6 years old again, small and scared in the dark. But there was a voice, warm, safe, singing softly, and hands, large and gentle, tucking a blanket around her shoulders. Daddy will always find you, sweetheart. This ring is magic, Emily gasped, her eyes flying open. I heard that. Just now, I heard someone say those words about the ring. Richard's face went pale. That's exactly what I told her. Word for word. They sat in silence for a long moment, the magnitude of what they were discussing settling over them like snow. Emily's entire life, everything she'd believed about herself, might be built on a foundation of nothing, or worse, built on someone else's crime. If I am your daughter, Emily said slowly, that means your ex-wife kidnapped me. That Grammy, the only mother I ever knew, helped cover it up. That my whole childhood was a lie. I know this is overwhelming. Overwhelming, Emily laughed, the sound brittle. Dr. Hale, you're asking me to consider that my entire identity might be false, that I might not even be Emily Carter. That's not overwhelming. That's... She stopped, pressing her hands against her eyes. I don't know what that is. Richard reached out, then hesitated, his hand hovering near her shoulder before falling back to his side. I shouldn't have sprung this on you. I'm sorry. I just thought you deserved to know what I suspected before you what? I already contacted a genetics lab in Memphis. A friend of mine runs it. If you agree, we could have answers in 3 days. Emily looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. She saw the hope burning in his eyes, barely restrained, saw the 20 years of grief etched into the lines around his mouth, saw a man who'd been searching for something precious for so long, that finding it might destroy him as surely as never finding it at all. And if the test says I'm not her? Emily asked softly. Richard's expression crumbled. Then I apologize for putting you through this, and we never speak of it again. And if it says I am, then, he swallowed hard, then I get back something I thought I'd lost forever. And you get answers about where you came from. Emily twisted the ring on her finger, watching it catch the dying light. 3 days to potentially learn the truth about her past. 3 days to discover whether the voice in her dreams had a face, a name, a reality. 3 days to find out if the man sitting beside her was the father she couldn't remember. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's do it." The nightmares started that night. Emily woke at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat, her heart hammering against her ribs. In her dream, she'd been running through a house she didn't recognize, calling for someone whose name she couldn't remember. There were hands reaching for her, not threatening, but desperate. A woman's voice, high and strained. "Come on, baby. We have to go, now before he comes back." And then darkness, the back seat of a car, motion, the smell of cigarettes and fear. Emily stumbled to her bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. Staring at her reflection in the mirror, did she look like Richard Hale? She tried to imagine her features beside his, searching for similarities. The eyes, maybe? The shape of the chin? Or was she just seeing what she wanted to see? Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Dr. Hale. "Can't sleep either. If you need to talk, I'm here." Emily picked up the phone, then set it down, then picked it up again. Finally, she typed, "The dreams are getting worse. I remembered something. A car. Someone saying we had to leave before he came back. Was that you? Were you the he?" The response came immediately. "Probably. Margaret was afraid of me by the end. Thought I'd try to take Sophia away. I wouldn't have. I just wanted shared custody. But she didn't believe me." Emily stared at the words. Margaret. Her mother's name. The mother she couldn't remember. The woman who might have stolen her from a father who loved her and disappeared into the American landscape like smoke. "I don't know who I am anymore," she typed. "You're Emily. You're a brilliant nurse. You're kind and careful, and you hum when you think no one's listening. DNA doesn't change those things, but it changes everything else. I know. I'm sorry." Emily set down the phone and returned to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, she lay in the darkness and let the fragments of memory wash over her. The garden with magnolia trees, the sound of rain on windows, a red balloon, a birthday cake shaped like a star, and through it all, that voice, that warm, safe voice singing her to sleep. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." By morning, Emily had made a decision. Whatever the DNA test revealed, she would face it. She'd spent 20 years not knowing where she came from, building an identity out of blank spaces and assumptions. Maybe it was time to fill in those blanks, even if the truth hurt, even if it meant losing Emily Carter to become someone else entirely, even if it meant discovering that the only mother she'd ever known had been complicit in a crime that destroyed a family. She texted Richard, "When can we do the test?" His response was immediate. "Today I'll pick you up at noon." Emily looked at the ring on her finger, at the star-shaped stone that had been with her through everything. Magic, someone had called it once. A promise that she would be found. Maybe the magic was finally working. The genetics lab in Memphis was nothing like Emily expected. She'd imagined something cold and clinical, all white walls and sterile equipment. Instead, Dr. Marcus Webb's facility occupied the second floor of a renovated brick building, with exposed beams and plants on every windowsill. "Richard?" Marcus embraced his old friend warmly, before turning to Emily with kind eyes. "And you must be Emily. I'm glad you both came." The cheek swab took less than 5 minutes. Marcus handled everything himself, labeling the samples carefully while explaining the process in layman's terms. 3 days for results. Maybe 4 if the lab got backed up. "I'll call you the moment I know anything," Marcus promised Richard, his expression grave. "And Richard, whatever happens, you've got support. You know that, right?" Richard nodded, but Emily saw the tension in his shoulders. The way his hands wouldn't stay still. This man who performed surgeries with steady precision was coming apart at the seams, waiting for an answer that could change both their lives. They drove back to Jackson in near silence, the October landscape blurring past the windows. Emily kept touching the ring, spinning it around her finger in an anxious rhythm she couldn't break. "I'm sorry," Richard said finally, his eyes on the road. "I keep thinking I should have waited, given you more time before pushing for this." "You didn't push," I agreed. Emily watched the trees flash by. Besides, I think I needed someone else to ask the question. I've wondered my whole life where I came from, but I was too scared to actually look for answers. What if they were worse than not knowing? And now I'm terrified either way. She laughed without humor. If the test says I'm not Sophia, I go back to being nobody from nowhere. If it says I am, then everything I thought I knew about my life is a lie. Richard's jaw tightened. For what it's worth, Emily, you're not nobody. Regardless of what that test says. You're someone who matters. Someone who... He stopped, seeming to catch himself. Someone any father would be proud to call his daughter. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Emily felt tears prick her eyes and turned to look out the window so Richard wouldn't see. The suspension dragged on. Victoria's investigation seemed designed to inflict maximum psychological damage, with HR calling Emily in for interviews that went nowhere, asking the same questions in different ways, never quite accusing, but never quite clearing her either. Emily spent her forced days off in her small apartment, jumping every time her phone buzzed, wondering if it was Marcus with results, or Har with more questions. The nightmares intensified. She started keeping a journal by her bed, writing down fragments as soon as she woke. A yellow room, pictures on the wall, animals maybe, the smell of pancakes, someone saying, "Careful, sweetheart, it's hot." On the third day, Richard called. His voice was shaking. "The results are in. Can I come over?" Emily's apartment had never felt smaller than it did waiting for Richard to arrive. She paced the tiny living room, straightening things that didn't need straightening, her heart doing acrobatics in her chest. When the knock finally came, she nearly tripped over her own feet getting to the door. Richard stood in the hallway holding a manila envelope. His face was unreadable, pale, stunned, like he'd been hit by something he didn't see coming. "Tell me," Emily whispered. "Please just tell me." Richard's hands trembled as he opened the envelope, pulling out the official lab report. "The probability of paternity is 99.97%. His voice broke. "Emily, you're my daughter. You're Sophia." The world stopped. Emily heard the words, understood them intellectually, but couldn't make them feel real. She looked down at her hands that suddenly belonged to someone else. Sophia, not Emily Carter. Small-town orphan raised by a grandmother who'd found her at a bus station. But Sophia Hale, stolen daughter, lost child, someone who'd been searched for desperately for 20 years. "I need to sit down," she said faintly. Richard caught her elbow. Guiding her to the couch, they sat side by side, the lab report between them like a bomb that had already detonated. "I'm Sophia," Emily said, testing the name. It felt foreign in her mouth, like a word from a language she'd forgotten. "I'm your daughter. You're my daughter." Richard's face crumpled, and suddenly he was crying. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. "God, Sophia, I looked everywhere. I never stopped looking. I'm so sorry I couldn't find you sooner. I'm so sorry." Something inside Emily broke. She didn't remember this man, didn't remember being Sophia, but she remembered the dreams, the voice, the feeling of being loved so completely that losing it had left a hole she'd carried for 20 years without understanding why. She threw her arms around Richard and held on tight while they both cried. 20 years of grief and loss and searching, finally finding release. He smelled like coffee and antiseptic, like hospitals and safety, and somewhere deep in Emily's fractured memory, something whispered, "Yes, this, home. I don't remember you." She sobbed against his shoulder. "I'm sorry. I don't remember. It's okay. It's okay." Richard pulled back, cupping her face in his hands, the way you'd hold something precious and breakable. "We'll make new memories. We have time now, all the time in the world." Emily looked at him, really looked at him, and tried to see the father hidden in the stranger's face, tried to reconcile the man holding her with the ghost who'd haunted her dreams. "Tell me about her," she said. "Tell me about Sophia. Who was I before I became Emily?" Richard smiled through his tears. "You were magic. You loved stars and stories. You'd collect rocks from the garden and arrange them in patterns. You were afraid of thunderstorms but brave about everything else. You made me read Goodnight Moon every single night for 2 years straight." He touched her hair gently. "You had your mother's eyes and your grandmother's stubbornness. And you were loved. God, Sophia, you were so loved. Emily closed her eyes, trying to grasp those memories, but they slipped away like water. She was Sophia. The lab report said so. The DNA didn't lie, but she still felt like Emily, 26-year-old orphan nurse who hummed old songs without knowing why. "What do we do now?" she asked. Richard wiped his eyes, seeming to pull himself together. "Now we figure this out together. And Emily, Sophia." He stumbled over the names. "Whatever you want me to call you, that's what I'll use. You don't have to become someone you're not. You're still you, no matter what name you use." "Emily," she decided. "For now, I need to stay Emily. Sophia feels like someone else, someone I don't know yet." "Emily, then." Richard squeezed her hand. "My daughter, Emily." The words settled over her like a blanket, strange but not unwelcome. She had a father, after 26 years of being alone, of building herself from blank spaces and borrowed histories. She had family, but even as the wonder of it washed over her, a darker thought intruded. If she was Sophia, if the DNA proved it, then Margaret hadn't just left with her daughter. She'd kidnapped her, stolen her from a father who'd loved her, and Grammy, sweet Grammy who'd raised her, who'd been the only mother Emily had ever known, had been part of it, had taken in a stolen child and never asked questions, never tried to find out where she really came from. "Your ex-wife," Emily said slowly. "Margaret, where is she now?" Richard's expression darkened. "Dead, heart attack, 7 years ago. I found out through a mutual acquaintance. I tried to trace where she'd been, hoping it would lead me to you. But the trail was cold, so no answers there. No way to ask Margaret why or how or what she'd been thinking. Just another dead end in a story full of them. And Grammy," Emily's voice was small. "Did she know? Did she know I was stolen? I don't know. Sweetheart, maybe she suspected but chose not to look too closely. Maybe Margaret told her some story about an abusive ex and she believed it." Richard's voice was gentle. "Or maybe she really did just find you at that bus station and did what she thought was right." Emily wanted to believe that. Needed to believe that Grammy had been good, had done her best, had loved Emily truly even if the circumstances were wrong. But doubt had taken root now, poisoning everything she thought she'd known. "I need time," she said, "to process this, to figure out who I am." "Of course. Take all the time you need." But even as Richard said it, Emily's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hope you're enjoying your suspension. Some people are saying Dr. Hale's inappropriate interest in you goes deeper than anyone realized. Wouldn't want that kind of scandal, would we?" Emily showed Richard the message, watching his face go dark with rage. "Victoria," he said. "This is her trying to prevent us from going public. She's escalating. Why does she care so much?" Richard's expression was grim. "I'm starting to think she knows more about your disappearance than she's admitting. And if that's true," he stood, his whole body tense with purpose, "then it's time we had a conversation with my sister about exactly what happened 20 years ago." Richard didn't confront Victoria immediately. Instead, he did what he'd learned to do over 30 years in medicine. He gathered evidence, built his case, and prepared for every possible outcome. The first call went to his lawyer, David Chen, who'd handled the divorce 2 decades ago and had never stopped feeling guilty about how it ended. "Richard, are you absolutely certain about this?" David's voice crackled through the phone speaker as Richard paced his study. "DNA evidence is solid, but accusing Victoria of conspiracy to kidnap? That's serious. Career-ending serious. Family-destroying serious." "I know what it is," Richard said. "But David, she's sabotaging Emily's career to keep us apart. She sent threatening texts. She knew about the ring before I told anyone. How would she know unless she was involved from the beginning? Circumstantial. A good lawyer would tear that apart." Papers rustled on David's end. "But if we can find proof of communication between Victoria and Margaret around the time Sophia disappeared, bank records, phone logs, anything concrete. Margaret's been dead for 7 years. Her records might still exist. Let me make some calls. In the meantime, don't tip your hand to Victoria. If she knows you're investigating, she'll destroy whatever evidence remains." Richard agreed, though patience felt impossible when his daughter was being persecuted by the same woman who'd likely stolen her in the first place. Emily spent those 3 days in limbo, suspended between identities. She was Emily Carter, the competent nurse unjustly accused. She was also Sophia Hale, kidnapped daughter finally found. Somehow she had to be both, and the cognitive dissonance was making her head spin. She started therapy, an emergency appointment with Dr. Sarah Morrison, who specialized in recovered memory cases. "I need you to understand something important," Dr. Morrison said during their first session. "Your memories may never fully return. The trauma of being separated from your father, combined with 20 years of living as someone else, your brain has built protective walls. We can work on lowering those walls, but we have to go slowly." "I don't have time to go slowly." Emily twisted the ring anxiously. "There's something happening at the hospital." "Richard, Dr. Hale, my father thinks his sister was involved in my disappearance. If that's true, she might do something drastic to prevent the truth from coming out." Dr. Morrison leaned forward. "Emily, I understand the urgency, but pushing too hard for memories that might not exist could be dangerous. You could create false memories, or destabilize the identity you've built as Emily. Are you prepared for that risk?" Emily thought about Grammy, about the small house in Hattiesburg where she'd grown up, about the life she'd built from nothing. Then she thought about Richard's face when the DNA results came back. The 20 years of grief finally finding release. "I need to know the truth," she said, "whatever it costs." On the second day, Richard received a call from Frank Morrison, the private investigator Victoria had hired, who'd developed a conscience. "Dr. Hale, I think you should know what your sister asked me to find." Frank's voice was rough with discomfort. "She wanted dirt on Emily Carter. When I couldn't find any real problems, she asked me to manufacture some, create fake credentials, plant evidence of prior misconduct at other hospitals. I refused, but she might find someone else who won't." Richard's blood ran cold. "Do you have proof of this? Recordings, emails?" "I kept records of all our conversations, Saya. You know, I can send them to you. But Dr. Hale, your sister is desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things." After hanging up, Richard immediately forwarded the recordings to David, then called Emily. "Pack a bag," he said without preamble. "You're staying at my place until this is resolved. I don't trust Victoria not to escalate." "Richard, I can't just—" "Please," his voice cracked. "I just got you back. I can't risk losing you again." Emily heard the fear underneath his words and relented. "Okay, give me an hour." Richard's house surprised Emily. She'd expected something grand, befitting a hospital director. Instead, it was modest, almost Spartan. A 2-bedroom craftsman with hardwood floors and minimal furniture. Everything was neat, orderly, and utterly impersonal. "You live like you're in a hotel," Emily said, setting her bag down in the guest room. Richard looked around as if seeing the space through fresh eyes. "I suppose I do. After Sophia. After you disappeared, I couldn't stand being around reminders, so I got rid of everything. Photos, furniture, anything that might hurt. I kept the house but stopped living in it." "If that makes sense." Emily walked to the mantel, where a single frame sat face down. She picked it up, turning it over to reveal a photo of a little girl with dark eyes and a gap-toothed grin, holding a red balloon. "That's me," she said softly. "That's Sophia. Last good day before everything fell apart. The hospital's summer picnic." Richard stood beside her, looking at the photo like it physically hurt. "You insisted on getting your face painted like a butterfly. Refused to let me wipe it off. Even for the picture." Emily studied the child's face, searching for recognition, for some spark of memory. But it was like looking at a stranger, someone she should know but didn't. "Tell me more," she said. "Tell me everything you remember about that day." So Richard did. He told her about the 3-legged race where she'd fallen and scraped her knee, but refused to cry because big girls don't cry, Daddy. About how she'd eaten so much cotton candy she'd made herself sick. About the way she'd fallen asleep in his arms during the drive home. The butterfly paint smeared across her cheek. "You were my whole world," Richard said, his voice thick. "When you were gone, it felt like someone had torn out my heart, and I had to keep living anyway. The hospital became my refuge. My patients needed me, so I couldn't fall apart completely. But Emily, Sophia, there wasn't a single day I didn't think about you. Didn't wonder where you were, if you were safe, if you remembered me." Emily set down the photo with shaking hands. I think I did. Remember you? I mean, in dreams, there was always this voice, this feeling of being loved. I never understood what it meant. But now, she looked at Richard, now I think it was you. My brain couldn't forget you completely, even when everything else was gone. Richard pulled her into a hug, and Emily let herself be held by this man who was simultaneously a stranger and the father she'd searched for in every dream. It should have felt wrong, awkward. Instead, it felt like coming home after a very long journey. On the third day, David called with news. I found something, he said, excitement cutting through his professional tone. Bank records from 20 years ago. Victoria made a withdrawal of $50,000 in cash 2 days before Sophia disappeared. Then, 3 days later, there's a record of Margaret opening a new account in Hattiesburg under a different name, Claire Donovan, with a deposit of $45,000. Richard's grip on the phone tightened. That's not circumstantial. No, it's not. Combined with Frank's recordings in the timeline, we have enough to go to the police, maybe even enough for criminal charges. What about the board? Can we use this to remove Victoria from the hospital? Absolutely. I can call an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. With this evidence, they'll have no choice but to suspend her pending investigation. David paused. Richard, are you ready for this to go public? Once we present this evidence, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. Your family's dirty laundry will be everywhere. Richard looked across the room at Emily, who was curled up on his couch reading a medical journal. Her feet tucked under her like she'd done it 1,000 times. Like she belonged there. Like she'd always belonged there. I don't care about dirty laundry, Richard said. I care about protecting my daughter. Call the meeting. That evening, Richard and Emily sat in his kitchen over takeout Chinese food, the evidence folder spread across the table between them. Tomorrow changes everything, Emily said, pushing lo mein around her plate without eating. Once that board meeting happens, everyone will know. About me, about what happened, about Victoria. Are you sure you're ready for that? Are you? Richard countered gently. Emily thought about it. About living as Emily Carter, unknown and unremarkable, versus becoming Sophia Hale, the stolen daughter at the center of a 20-year-old scandal. About facing Victoria, who might have destroyed her family for nothing more than jealousy and ambition. No, she admitted. But I don't think I'll ever be ready. So we might as well do it anyway. Richard smiled, sad and proud all at once. You're braver than you know. Grammy used to say that bravery is just fear that says its prayers and moves forward anyway. Emily's voice caught. I wish I could ask her about all this, about what she knew, what Margaret told her, if she really loved me, or if I was just convenient. She loved you, Richard said with certainty. Whatever else was true, that woman raised you with love. I'm grateful to her for that. Even if the circumstances were wrong, Emily nodded, blinking back tears. Tomorrow they would face Victoria. Tomorrow the truth would come out. Tomorrow she would stop being just Emily Carter and become Sophia Hale again, whether she was ready or not. But tonight, she was just a daughter having dinner with her father, and that was enough. The hospital boardroom had never felt so suffocating. Richard stood at the head of the long mahogany table, Emily beside him, while 12 board members filed in with expressions ranging from curious to concerned. David Chen sat to Richard's left, his briefcase full of evidence that would either vindicate them or destroy what remained of the Hale family legacy. Victoria arrived last, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with deliberate confidence. She took her seat across from Richard, her face a mask of professional composure, but her eyes betrayed her. They flickered between Richard and Emily with barely concealed panic. This is highly irregular, Victoria said, as board chair Margaret Sullivan called the meeting to order, convening an emergency session without proper notice. We followed protocol, Margaret Sullivan interrupted, her voice crisp with authority. Dr. Richard Hale invoked his right as director to call an urgent meeting regarding matters affecting hospital operations and reputation. Victoria, you'll have your chance to speak. First, let's hear what Richard has to say. Richard stood, his hands steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He'd performed countless surgeries, made life or death decisions in seconds, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. 20 years ago, my daughter Sophia disappeared, he began, his voice carrying across the silent room. My ex-wife Margaret took her and vanished. I spent 2 decades searching, hiring investigators, following dead ends. I never stopped believing I'd find her. He pressed a button on the laptop, and Sophia's childhood photo appeared on the screen. The gap-toothed girl with the red balloon and the unmistakable silver ring on her finger. 3 weeks ago, Emily Carter joined our nursing staff, and I noticed something impossible. Another click. Emily's employment photo appeared beside Sophia's childhood picture. She was wearing this ring, the same ring I'd given my daughter, a one-of-a-kind piece I'd bought from a street jeweler in New Orleans. Murmurs rippled through the room. Board members leaned forward, studying the images. That's circumstantial at best, Victoria interjected, her voice tight. Thousands of rings look similar, which is why we conducted a DNA test. Richard pulled out the lab report, his hand steady as he passed copies to each board member. The results came back 3 days ago. Emily Carter is Sophia Hale, my daughter. The probability of paternity is 99.97%. The room erupted. Questions flew from every direction. Emily gripped the edge of the table, her face pale but determined as the board members stared at her with new eyes. "This is extraordinary," Margaret Sullivan said, reading the report with widening eyes. "But Richard, what does this have to do with hospital operations? Surely this is a personal matter. It becomes hospital business when someone on staff has been actively sabotaging Emily's career to prevent this truth from coming out." Richard turned to face his sister. "Victoria knew who Emily was before I did. She's been orchestrating a campaign of harassment and false accusations to discredit her. And I believe Victoria was involved in Sophia's original disappearance." Victoria shot to her feet. "That's a lie. You have no proof." "Actually, we do." David Chen opened his briefcase, pulling out a thick folder. "Bank records from 20 years ago show Victoria withdrew $50,000 in cash 2 days before Sophia disappeared. 3 days later, Margaret opened a new account in Hattiesburg under the name Claire Donovan with a deposit of $45,000. He distributed more copies, watching Victoria's face drain of color. "That proves nothing," Victoria said, but her voice wavered. "I gave Margaret money for the divorce settlement. What she did with it afterward. There was no divorce settlement requiring cash," David continued smoothly. "The divorce was finalized 6 months earlier with all assets divided through the court. This was a separate transaction. And then there's this." He pressed play on a recording. Frank Morrison's voice filled the room. "Ms. Hale, I can't manufacture evidence against an innocent employee. What you're asking me to do is illegal," Victoria's voice responded. "I don't care about legal. I care about making that girl disappear before she ruins everything. Find something or create something. I don't care which." The silence that followed was deafening. "That recording is inadmissible," Victoria said desperately. "Taken without my consent." "It's perfectly admissible in a civil proceeding," David countered. "And we're not done. We also have this." He produced another document. A letter written by Margaret Donovan, formerly Margaret Hale, 3 months before she died. She left it with her attorney with instructions to open it, only if certain conditions were met. One of those conditions was if anyone came looking for information about Sophia. Emily's breath caught. A letter from her mother, the woman she couldn't remember, who'd stolen her from her father and rebuilt both their lives on lies. David began reading. "To whoever finds this, I need to confess what I've done. 20 years ago, I took my daughter and disappeared. I was scared, desperate, and Victoria Hale convinced me it was my only option. She told me Richard would take Sophia away, that I'd lose her forever in a custody battle. She offered me money to start over somewhere new, somewhere Richard would never find us. I took it because I was weak and frightened." Victoria sank into her chair, her face ashen. David continued. "I changed our names. I left Sophia at a bus station in Hattiesburg, where Victoria had arranged for someone to find her and take her in. I was supposed to retrieve her once things settled, but I couldn't. I was too afraid, too ashamed, so I let my daughter be raised by a stranger while I rebuilt my life with Victoria's blood money. Richard, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. Sophia deserved better. You deserved better. Victoria manipulated me. But I made the choice to listen. That's on me," the letter went on. detailing Victoria's involvement, the planning, the arrangements with Eleanor Carter to take in the abandoned child. By the end, several board members were visibly shaken. Margaret Sullivan looked at Victoria with cold fury. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in her life, she had no clever response, no manipulation ready, just the weight of 20 years of lies crushing down on her. "I did what I had to do," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "Richard had everything, father's love, the director position, respect. I just wanted something of my own." "So you destroyed his family," Emily spoke for the first time, her voice shaking with rage. "You stole me from my father. You paid my mother to abandon me with a stranger. For what? Hospital politics. You don't understand," Victoria said, but there was no conviction in her words. "I never meant for it to go this far. Margaret was supposed to keep you. Just move away. The bus station thing was her idea when she couldn't handle raising you alone." "Enough!" Margaret Sullivan's voice cracked like a whip. "Victoria Hale, you are hereby terminated from St. Vincent Memorial, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Furthermore, this board will be turning over all evidence to the district attorney's office. What you've done goes beyond workplace misconduct. It's criminal conspiracy." 2 security guards appeared at the door as if summoned. Victoria stood slowly, her carefully constructed composure finally crumbling completely. She looked at Richard, and for a moment, Emily saw something that might have been regret flicker across her face. "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered. "I know it doesn't matter now, but I am sorry." Richard said nothing. There were no words adequate for what his sister had done. No forgiveness large enough to cover 20 years of stolen moments, missed birthdays, lost time. Victoria walked to the door, then paused, looking back at Emily. "For what it's worth, Eleanor was good to you. I made sure of that much. I chose someone who would love you like her own." Then she was gone, escorted out by security. While the board members sat in stunned silence, Margaret Sullivan cleared her throat. "Miss Carter, or should I say Miss Hale, on behalf of this institution, I apologize for the treatment you've received. Your suspension is hereby lifted with full back pay. Furthermore, we'd like to offer you a formal apology and whatever support you need moving forward." Emily nodded. Unable to speak past the lump in her throat, Richard pulled her into his arms, and she buried her face in his shoulder, finally allowing herself to break down. The truth was out. Victoria was gone, but the cost. 20 years they'd never get back, a childhood she couldn't remember, a mother she'd lost twice, felt almost too heavy to bear. "We're going to be okay," Richard whispered into her hair. "I promise, sweetheart. We're going to be okay." Emily held on to him and chose to believe it. The media storm hit within hours. By evening, news vans lined the street outside St. Vincent Memorial, reporters shouting questions at anyone who entered or left the building. The story had everything: kidnapping, family betrayal, a daughter found after 20 years. It was the kind of sensational narrative that dominated news cycles for weeks. Richard's phone hadn't stopped ringing. News outlets, talk shows, documentary producers, everyone wanted the exclusive story. He'd turned off his phone after the 15th call and focused on what mattered. Emily, who sat curled up on his couch, staring at nothing while the world exploded around them. "You should eat something," Richard said gently, setting a bowl of soup on the coffee table. Emily didn't look at it. "They're calling me the stolen daughter on CNN, like I'm a headline, not a person." "I know. I'm sorry. We can release a statement asking for privacy." "It won't matter." Emily finally looked at him, her eyes red from crying. "This is my life now. Everyone knowing my business, judging my mother, pitying me. I went from being nobody to being somebody's tragedy." Richard sat beside her, close but not touching, giving her space to process. "We don't have to do any interviews. We don't have to tell anyone anything. This is your story, Emily. You get to decide how it's told." "Do I?" She laughed bitterly. "Because it feels like everyone's already decided. Poor Sophia, stolen by her crazy mother. Poor Richard, searching for 20 years. Poor Grammy, taking in a kidnapped child." Her voice cracked. "Nobody's asking if I'm okay with having my entire life rewritten. Are you okay with it?" Emily was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I keep waiting to feel something. Relief, anger, joy. But mostly I just feel numb. Like this is happening to someone else and I'm watching from far away. That's normal. Trauma response. Richard risked putting a hand on her shoulder. Emily, we can get through this together. But you have to let me in. Let me help. You've been helping. She leaned into his touch slightly. You've been amazing. It's just, I look at you, and I know you're my father. The DNA says so. The evidence says so. My own dreams say so, but I don't feel it yet. Not the way I should. There's no should, Richard said firmly. You were 6 when you lost me. Your brain protected you by blocking those memories. We can't force them back. We just have to build something new. Emily nodded, wiping her eyes. Grammy used to say that family isn't just blood. It's who shows up, who stays, who loves you even when it's hard. She met Richard's gaze. You've been showing up. That counts for something. Before Richard could respond, his doorbell rang. He frowned. He'd told everyone to stay away, given strict instructions to the security company monitoring the house. He checked the camera feed and his expression darkened. Victoria stood on his doorstep, looking small and disheveled in a way he'd never seen. Her perfect hair was mussed, her designer suit wrinkled. She'd been crying. Don't answer it, Emily said immediately. I have to. She'll just keep coming back. Richard looked at Emily. You don't have to see her. You can go upstairs. No. Emily stood, squaring her shoulders. I want to hear what she has to say. Richard hesitated, then opened the door. Victoria flinched as if she'd expected it to stay closed. I know I have no right to be here, Victoria said quickly. But please just give me 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Richard wanted to slam the door in her face, wanted to call the police and have her arrested for trespassing. But Emily nodded slightly, and he stepped aside to let Victoria enter. They stood in the living room like boxers in a ring, measuring distances, preparing for impact. Victoria's eyes went immediately to Emily, and something in her expression crumpled. You look so much like her, Victoria whispered. Like Margaret when she was young, but you have Richard's eyes. You don't get to talk about what I look like, Emily said coldly. You don't get to act like you know me. You destroyed my family. I know what I did. Victoria's voice shook. I've been sitting in my apartment for the past 6 hours trying to figure out how to explain, how to justify it. But there is no justification. I was jealous and bitter, and I made a choice that hurt everyone. Why? Richard's voice was hard as stone. Why would you do this to your own family? Victoria sank into a chair without being invited. Because I was tired of being invisible. Father loved you. Only you. You were the brilliant son, the surgeon, the one who'd carry on the Hale legacy. I was just there, ornamental, useful when it suited him. So you decided to destroy my life. Richard's control was slipping. To steal my daughter. I wanted you to hurt the way I hurt. Victoria's composure finally broke. I wanted you to know what it felt like to lose everything that mattered. I was 28 years old, and I'd spent my entire life in your shadow. When Margaret came to me crying about the divorce, about losing custody, I saw an opportunity to get revenge on your brother by traumatizing a 6-year-old child, Emily said, her voice shaking with rage. Victoria looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. I told myself you'd be fine, that Margaret would take good care of you, that you'd just move somewhere new and be happy, when she couldn't handle it and wanted to give you up. I arranged for Eleanor to take you in. I made sure she was kind, stable, loving. I checked in over the years. You checked in? Emily's voice rose. You knew where I was this whole time, and you let my father suffer. Let him search and grieve while you knew exactly where his daughter was. I couldn't tell him without exposing what I'd done. And the longer time went on, the harder it got. The lie became so big I couldn't see a way out. Victoria wiped her eyes. I know that's not good enough. I know sorry doesn't fix 20 years. But I need you both to know. I regret it. Every day, I regret it. Good, Richard said flatly. You should. The district attorney is filing charges, Victoria continued. Conspiracy to kidnap, obstruction of justice. My lawyer says I'm looking at 5 to 10 years. I'll probably lose my license to practice hospital administration. My career is over." "That's not enough," Emily said. "You took my childhood. You took my memories of my father. You made Grammy complicit in a crime. You turned my whole life into a lie." "I know." Victoria stood, seeming to accept that redemption wasn't possible. "I didn't come here for forgiveness. I came to tell you that I'm not fighting the charges. I'm pleading guilty and I'm setting up a trust fund in Emily's name. Everything I have, my savings, my share of the family estate, everything. It won't fix what I broke, but maybe it can help build something new." Richard stared at his sister, this woman he'd grown up with, shared a home with, trusted. Now she was a stranger, worse than a stranger, a monster who'd worn his sister's face. "Get out," he said quietly, "and don't come back, ever." Victoria nodded, already moving toward the door. She paused at the threshold, looking back one last time. "For what it's worth, Emily, Eleanor loved you. That part was real. Whatever lies I told, whatever manipulations I made, her love for you was genuine. I made sure of that." Then she was gone, leaving father and daughter standing in the wreckage of her confession. Emily sank onto the couch, her whole body trembling. "I can't believe she just admitted all of it. Guilt has a way of eating people alive." Richard sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. "She's going to prison. She'll lose everything. But Emily, that doesn't give us back what we lost." "No," Emily agreed, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "But maybe we can build something new. Something better than what Victoria tried to destroy." Richard held his daughter, his found daughter, his miracle, and let himself believe it. They'd been torn apart by betrayal and lies, but they'd found each other again. That had to count for something. "We start over," he said. "New memories, new traditions, new everything." Emily pulled back to look at him, and for the first time since the DNA results, she smiled. "Okay, Dad, let's start over." The word, Dad, hung in the air between them, precious and new. Richard felt tears sting his eyes but didn't try to hide them. His daughter had called him Dad. After 20 years, he'd finally heard that word again. And this time, no one could take it away. 3 months later, the magnolia trees were blooming. Emily stood in the hospital garden where everything had started, watching white petals drift down like snow in the warm April breeze. The media frenzy had finally died down. Replaced by newer scandals and fresher tragedies, Victoria's guilty plea had made headlines for a week, then faded into the background noise of the 24-hour news cycle. Life, somehow, had continued. "Thought I'd find you here." Richard appeared beside her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He'd learned she took hers with too much cream and not enough sugar. One of 1,000 small details they were discovering about each other. "I was thinking about Grammy," Emily said, accepting the cup, wondering what she'd think about all this. "She'd be proud of you. The way you've handled everything." Emily wasn't so sure. 3 weeks ago, she'd finally made the trip to Hattiesburg, to the small cemetery where Eleanor Carter was buried. She'd stood at the grave for an hour, trying to reconcile the woman who'd raised her with love against the woman who'd knowingly harbored a stolen child. In the end, she'd decided both could be true. Grammy had made a terrible choice, but she'd loved Emily fiercely. That love didn't excuse the crime, but it didn't erase it either. People were complicated. Morality was messy. Emmy had to make peace with that. "The prosecutor called this morning," Richard said. "Victoria's sentencing is next week. They're recommending 8 years. Are you going to be there?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to see it through, watch her face consequences, but another part just wants to be done with all of it." He looked at Emily. "What do you want?" Emily had thought about this question a lot. In the beginning, she'd wanted Victoria to suffer, to pay for every stolen memory and lost moment. But time had softened the rage into something more complex, a mixture of anger and pity and profound sadness. "I think I need to go," she said slowly. "Not for her, for me, to close that chapter." Richard nodded. "Then we'll go together." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the hospital staff come and go through the garden. Emily had returned to work 6 weeks ago, and the whispers had mostly stopped. She was just Emily Carter again. Or rather, Emily Hale now, though she still wasn't used to the name change. Some things took time. Dr. Morrison asked if I wanted to stay in cardiac or transfer to pediatrics. Emily said, "He thinks I'd be good with kids." "You'd be amazing with kids." Richard smiled. "But it's your choice. Whatever you want to do, I'll support it." Emily turned to face him fully. "What if what I want is to take a few months off, travel, figure out who I am now that I know where I came from?" She watched worry flicker across Richard's face before he controlled it. They'd talked about his fear of losing her again, about how the trauma of her disappearance had left him terrified of letting her out of his sight. He was working on it in therapy, but progress was slow. "If that's what you need," Richard said carefully, "then that's what you should do. I want you to come with me." The words tumbled out before Emily could second-guess them. "At least for part of it. We could go to New Orleans, see where you bought the ring, visit places you used to take me when I was little, build new memories on top of the old ones." Richard's eyes went bright with unshed tears. "You'd want me there." "Of course I would. You're my dad." Emily said the word easily now, without the hesitation that had marked their first weeks together. "And I've missed enough time with you. I don't want to miss any more." Richard pulled her into a hug, and Emily relaxed into it, breathing in the scent that had become synonymous with home. Coffee and antiseptic, and something uniquely him. She still didn't remember him from childhood, might never remember those first 6 years, but she was building something better. A present relationship based on choice rather than just biology. "There's something I want to show you," Richard said when they pulled apart. "I've been waiting for the right moment." He led her through the hospital to his office, where he pulled a box from his desk drawer. Inside was a photo album, leather-bound, obviously expensive, and filled with pictures Emily had never seen. "I made copies of everything before Margaret left," Richard explained. "Hid them at a friend's house because I knew she'd try to destroy them. After you disappeared, I couldn't look at them, but I kept them, just in case." Emily turned the pages slowly, her hands trembling. There she was, Sophia, at every age from newborn to 6, baby pictures, first steps, birthday parties, random Tuesday afternoons, a whole childhood documented in fading photographs, and in every picture where she appeared, there was the ring on a chain around her neck, too big for her fingers, but present nonetheless. "This is me," Emily whispered, touching a photo of herself at 3, covered in mud and grinning wildly. "This is who I was. This is who you were," Richard agreed. "But Emily, you're so much more than that now. You're the woman who survived being stolen and still chose kindness, who found out her whole life was built on lies and decided to build something true, who gave a broken father a second chance even though you didn't have to." Emily closed the album and looked at Richard, really looked at him. She saw the lines around his eyes from years of grief, the gray in his hair that had come too early, the way he still sometimes looked at her like she might disappear if he blinked. But she also saw pride, love, hope. "Can I keep this?" she asked, holding up the album. "It's yours. It's always been yours." They walked back to the garden together as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Emily found their bench, the one where Richard had first questioned her about the song, where everything had started to unravel and rebuild simultaneously. She sat down, and Richard joined her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Tell me about her," Emily said. "About Sophia. Not the tragedy, not the stolen daughter, just who she was before everything went wrong." So Richard did. He told her about a little girl who collected rocks and named them all, who insisted on wearing her butterfly wings to the grocery store, who made up songs about everything, brushing teeth, getting dressed, walking to the park, who loved her father with the uncomplicated fierceness only children possess. "She sounds wonderful," Emily said when he finished. "She was, and she still is, just different." Richard squeezed her hand. "You're wonderful too, Emily, exactly as you are." Emily looked down at the ring on her finger, the same ring that had survived 20 years and 2 lifetimes, the blue star catching the fading sunlight just as it had in that photograph decades ago. "This ring is magic," she said softly, echoing words she didn't quite remember, but somehow knew. "As long as I wear it, you'll always find me. I already did. Sweetheart." Richard's voice was thick with emotion. "And I'm never letting go again." They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, Father and daughter reunited, watching the sky turn from gold to purple to indigo. The magnolia petals continued their gentle drift around them. And somewhere in the hospital behind them, lives were being saved and lost and changed forever. But in this moment, in this garden, there was only peace, only healing, only a promise kept after 20 years of darkness. Emily leaned her head on Richard's shoulder and let herself believe in magic, the magic of love that survived betrayal and time and loss, the magic of a ring that had somehow led her home, the magic of a father who never stopped searching, and a daughter who never stopped dreaming of a voice that sang her to sleep. "I love you, Dad," she whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart," Richard replied, his voice breaking with joy. "Welcome home." The blue star on Emily's finger caught one last ray of sunlight and blazed bright, a beacon that had finally fulfilled its promise. The magic had always been there, waiting. All it needed was time, and faith, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his daughter, 20 years apart. Finally, blessedly, home.